Good morning. My name is Addy. I, on behalf of Forest Consulting Services, Inc., welcome all of you for the webinar on core and progress employer challenges for transitioning to COR 2020 and how to address them. Forest is conducting this webinar in partnership with the ECAO exclusively for you, that is the ECAO membership. We would like to thank Kathy and Kamakshi for their consistent support to help us organize these kind of info sessions. This webinar will be recorded and shared with the ECAO to be circulated among its membership, including those who are attending and those who are not able to attend the webinar. Please type in your questions in the Q&A box if you have a question. It could be in the bottom or the top of your Zoom screen. And we will try and take your questions at appropriate times. And there will be a Q&A section right at the end of the webinar. Thank you very much. And let's move straight into the agenda for today's webinar. So we're going to start off with why move to COR 2020? And we have got an external COR auditor and ISO lead auditor, along with a very experienced business development expert, so to guide you through the whole process. So why move to COR 2020? Transition timelines of the IHSA, basic transition planning, and the elements of COR 2020. We're going to divide it into three categories: the new elements of COR 2020, the common elements of 2015 and 2020, and those that are integrated between 2015 and 2020. And then we're going to dive deep into the challenges with certain key elements that we've been observing as a consultant of 100 plus core support clients and as external core auditors, which is element 1, 3, 4, 7, 8, and 14, as you can see, and a quick overview of the general challenges. So before we move in to the first speaker, that's Sobi Raghunathan, let's do a quick poll to understand understand the audience we have today and where you are in terms of your core transition journey. That'll help our speakers calibrate their messaging. So can I request my Zoom team to quickly run the poll, please, and let us know the results once they're done. Here are the poll questions on your screen, and all you need to do is just click on the poll button on the top of your Zoom screen or either on the bottom, and you can see the poll questions, the three of them. One is your organization core certification in progress? Yes, no, or you're thinking about core. And the second question is, how are you managing your document and record control? A very huge piece of COR 2020, which the external auditor is going to be talking about, either digitally or manually. Please let us know. What is your COR 2020 transition status? Transition in progress, not started yet, or completed the transition? So we'll hold on for about approximately 15 to 20 seconds, and I'll request my team to show me the results so that we can move straight to the meat of the action. I think we can see the results right now, and then we can go to the meat of the action. Can I please request my team to let me know what the results are so that I can let the speakers know? So all of them on this call are core in progress, Sobi and John. And how are you managing the record control? All of them digitally, okay? And the third question that I asked, and the answer is 50-50. 50% of them are transitioning in progress, and 50% of them have not yet started. Thank you very, very much. That will really educate the speakers today to calibrate their messaging accordingly. Let's move on to the first speaker for today. Her name is Sobi Raghunathan. Sobi is the IHSA External Core Auditor and the Vice President Operations Strategy and Partnerships for Forest Consulting Services, Inc. And Sobi of Champions and at the OGCA as well. And Sobi participates in various industry leadership activities, and it sits on the board of governors of the Ryerson University. Without any further delay, let me pass it over to Sobi Raghunathan, who will start talking about why the change to COR 2020. Over to you, Sobi.
Thank you so much, Addy. Welcome, and it's a pleasure to meet you guys all virtually. One of these days soon, we will go to live seminars so that we could have more engagement, interactions, and helping people out with their questions and concerns. But thanks to the virtual world for the time being. Today, we are going to be focusing on COR 2020. Why the change for COR 2020? And I'm sure many of you must have heard, IHSA through COR 2020 because of the SOCI program. SOCI is it's the accredited program to become safest employers in Ontario. It is alignment with ISO 45001. So the CPO's office, MLTSD, came up with the Safest Employers Recognition Program, where you have financial incentive as well as it's a prestigious badge to have as the safest employer in Ontario. They designed and aligned the program based on ISO 45001 to meet the international standards. ISO 45001 is it's a good safety management system, no difference to COR program. COR is also a great safety management system. It is very prescriptive. The biggest difference between ISO 45001 and COR is very prescriptive, which is very good for sectors like construction to get started. So there were a few missing pieces for that alignment, and for them to align, they came up with the new version of COR, which is the COR 2020. There are a few key dates for you to understand and remember when you are planning for the COR 2020 transition. It is a 5-year transition period, and the first timeline that impacted everyone is December 1st, 2021. As of December 1st, 2021, any internal audit that is going to be submitted after December 1st have to be submitted based on 2020 standards. They are not accepting any more of the 2015. Those of you who have 2015 and who are already certified in 2015, you do have different timelines to focus in on. So do not go into a panic mode and jump into transition, because you do have the time. Those of you who just started your journey, you do need to be aware that 2015 is obsolete, and you do need to start your journey with 2020. The other key date to remember is October 1st, 2022. If you were to go through any external audits after October 1st, 2022, it will only be accepted based on COR 2020 standards. So external auditors like myself and my associate partners all will be auditing organizations as of October 1st, only using COR 2020 standards. So those of you who have submitted, and I can speak from experience of being an external auditor as well as senior manager at Forest Consulting, where we oversee over 100 clients who are going through the COR journey. And many of our clients are in various different stages. 1/3 of our clients are already COR certified, and they are in their year 2, 3, 4. When you hit year 4, you are in your cycle 2. Year 1 is considered cycle 1. And when you complete your internal audit, you call an external auditor for your external audit. Once you complete your external audit successfully, reaching over 80%, you become COR certified. So that begins your journey for COR certified with cycle 1. Cycle 2 starts at the beginning of year 4. So each year 4, Addy, can you just pause for a bit, please, on those slides? Year 4 is focusing on, again, inviting the external auditor to go through the whole audit. Every year before the anniversary date, you do need to submit your internal audit. And fourth year, you will call an external auditor again to do a full audit of your program. It is very important for each and every one of you to understand. You don't need to rush through. So if you're going through the audit right now, or if you have cycle 4 audits that are happening, you have a choice to continue with your 2015. Or auditor is not going to audit you unless you specifically request them to audit you based on 2020 standard. I would recommend each and every client, and this is something IHSA is also recommending, would need more time, take more time to do your transition. Because when you are asking an external auditor to audit you, if you don't meet the cut with 65% minimum for each of the elements and then overall 80% score, you are going to go into a corrective action plan. That means you are not going to be certified right away. Till you actually complete the corrective action, you will be, your status will be pending. So be aware of those things. Take your time to do the transition. Those of you who are going to be facing external audit around October time, just after October 1st, you better start planning and start your transition plan right away, because you do need time to do your transition documents and align the whole program based on the 2020 audit tool. Those of you who just passed cycle 1 or you have a little bit more time, because IHSA has said if you are not facing an external audit by October 1st, after October 1st, 2022, then you have more time to do your transition. So you have time for the next 3 years to do your transition. So you can really plan it well. But my recommendation is align your program. It needs time. It will take a good 6 months to a year based on the support that you're going to get to go through these transitions. Once you have aligned your program, you do get, if you do participate in a safety excellence program, you do get the rebates for the transition, as well as then once you pass an external audit with COR 2020, you could apply for becoming a part of the SOCI program, where you can tap into 3 more years of a little bit more increased rebates from SIB. So I hope I have clarified those details, because those are some crucial information for each and every one of you to understand. When you're planning your transition, please take your time and identify all the efforts that's required to become compliant to COR 2020. I would start the journey with the 4 major topics. That is the missing gap between ISO and COR as the starting point. Allocate resources. Allocate resources is crucial, because this is not a journey that you're going to do it on your own. You would want definitely senior management's engagement. One of my favorite topics is talking about due diligence and senior management's engagement to create safe workplace culture. You know, if you are COR certified or you are in the process of getting COR certified, you are having a good safety management system in place, or you have started the journey towards having a great safety management system in place. Safety management system is not just about having one gatekeeper as your health and safety coordinator or a manager overseeing the program. It is your senior management being involved, your middle management understanding the program and supporting you in maintaining the program on an ongoing basis. So please do allocate resources while you are going through this transition. Assign responsibility to your team, because it is going to be a teamwork, and set realistic timelines. As I mentioned to you, based on where you are and what is your cycle 4 audit date and everything else, you set realistic milestones for your transition. Minimum 6 to 10 months is needed for the transition, because there's quite a bit of documentation that you do need to change and then need to do the communication to your team. Now, diving a little bit deeper into understanding the big difference and the new elements, common elements, as well as integrated elements from 2015 to 22. IHSA has done amazing work in supporting the clients to make them understand the tool, the documentation, all that. But just to focus on focus us into the new elements. Document and record control is one of the major pieces that you really, really need to start paying attention to. This will be reflected throughout the 2020 transition. Every document you create, every review that you do for safety management system, you do need to follow a process. Procurement and contractor management. 2015 audit guidelines and the audit tool, contractor management just had one major line, and that was it. Right now, contractor management is a dedicated topic on its own with many subtopics that you do need to validate, especially since we are speaking to subcontractors here. You may seek other subcontractors to support you in delivering certain projects. You do need to encourage them to align with your program. They do need to make sure that they have a safety management system that they are following. So there's a lot of emphasis given for subcontractor management. And the third major topic is management of change. Any changes that happens within the organization, there needs to be a process to manage the change. So I'll be going a little bit deeper into the coming up slides. Each of these elements, what are some of the areas where you really need to focus? Now let's look at the common elements. If you look at 2015 and compare that to 2020, health and safety policy is still under element 1. Element 1 remains element 1 with the subsection for document and record management in the new COR 2020. Hazard assessment, analysis, and control still remains element 2. Company rules, element 5 remains the same. Personal protective, again, remains the same as element 7. Preventive maintenance is same. There are a few additions that we need to focus on. Training and communication is still 8. Workplace inspection is 9. No major changes to those elements. Investigation and reporting remains 10. Emergency preparedness is 11. Emergency preparedness now actually have embedded first aid into element 11 under COR 2020. Statistics and records is element 12, remains the same. Legislation and other requirements is element 13, which remains the same. And management review has now become element 14, which is titled as management of change. So these are some of the common elements, and let's look at the integrated elements when we compare 2015 to 2020. Safe work practices, which used to be element 13, still remains as element 3. Now safe work procedures is added into element 3 as controls. So the title safe work practices and safe job procedures is being removed, and now it's all kind of grouped under controls. Element 14, which used to focus on occupational health aspect, is now again integrated into element 3 under controls. Element 14 also reflects on legislative requirement indirectly in element 13 of the new COR 2020. First aid program used to be a standalone element 15 in COR 2015. Now it's being embedded into element 11 under emergency preparedness, inspections, element 9, and training and communication, element 8. Workplace representative and joint health and safety committee, which is element 16 from COR 2015, is being removed and just merged into legislative requirement, and there's no direct identified action item, but it is expected that you follow all the details. So my recommendation to every one of you, if you have a well-written program in place for health and safety reps at JHSC, please continue to maintain that. It is not obsolete. It's just embedded under Element 13 legislation. The same thing goes for workplace violence and return to work program. Do not remove these programs. Just merge them under Element 13, because Element 13, they now are taking the ISO route, which is they assume that you follow all the legislatively required items. So please pay attention to those. You do need to continue to maintain those documents. It's just that it's being merged into Element 13. Moving on to looking at elements that can pose a little bit of a transition challenges, or rather than calling it areas that you really need to pay a little bit more attention. That is 1.2, 3, which is controls, 4, 7, 8, and 14.2, which we are going to look at each of these elements much more in detail. 1.2 reflects documents and record control. Now you do need to have a written policy and procedure identifying roles and responsibilities in terms of who is going to be maintaining what kind of document and what kind of record control. Each document and records needs to be analyzed for the health and safety management system effectiveness. There must be a review, update, and reapproval dates on each of these documents. Identify a means to track these documents revisions. So these are controls that you do need to identify and implement. That's why I mentioned to you the transition. You should plan and give yourself ample time to make this transition happen, because you do need to go back and look at all the documents you have for health and safety management system and start aligning them towards this procedure, and ensure availability of relevant versions. So as external auditors, when we go out to do our external audits, we are going to be paying attention to relevant documents. When we do site observations, interviews, we do pay attention to the documents that they are using, and we will be assessing them to make sure that they're not using old versions. So if your policies and procedures indicates these are the current version, that is the version that we would like to see on the field. Make sure to prevent the use of obsolete documents, take them away from day-to-day use. So that's why one of the things I would highly, highly recommend for each and every one of you who are going through the journey to implement a management system, safety management system, identify a good safety management system support. So online management system tools. There are many out there. There are a dime a dozen, but choose the one that's going to serve your purpose well. I always tell all of our clients, if you can have LMS and record control, record management all integrated into one, that would be an ideal system, because LMS, learning management system, for managing and administering training, piece of your puzzle for safety management system, along with record management. So when you do make a choice, consider these options, because these are options that you really do need to factor in. Element number 3, controls. The biggest change hazard assessment and controls have in 2020 is it is very common for external auditors and safety professionals, when we go out there, do gap analysis, we do many gap analysis. If a client is actually looking to get a feedback on their program before they actually call an external auditor, or if they did work on their program by themselves, they sometimes do want to get external third party to come in and look at their program and give guidance or recommendations. One of the common things we always notice is hazard assessment is identified following some methodology, But when they're identifying controls, they always tend to, I would say 9 out of, or 9.5 out of 10 times, they always jump into PPE as an easy means of control. To eliminate that, we are emphasizing on following the hierarchy of controls. You do need to look at elimination, substitution, engineering controls, administrative controls, then focusing on PPE. So you also need to explain your choice of hierarchy of control. So if you said the only means you could control this hazard is through PPE, then you do need to validate why. If you chose to go with engineering control, just give a reason why. If you decide to go with elimination or substitution, say that we actually had this process in place, and because it is a hazardous process and we eliminate it, we decide to eliminate that process. So those are some of the explanations that we will be actually focusing in when we are reviewing your element 2 and 3. Element 4 focuses on procurement and contractor management. As I mentioned to you, this is an entirely new detailed element where we are looking for defined roles and responsibilities for managing contractors and how do you go about procuring any kind of services or procuring equipment. When we are talking about contractor management, we want to see that contractors are completing hazard assessments on your site. So if you have subcontractors working for you to represent part of your work as part of your project, then we do need to see the hazard assessments being completed. In the past, when we did external audits, we only paid attention to our contract with the organization and their health and safety management system. Now, as part of element 4, we will be paying attention to certain aspects of the contractors' health and safety program, especially the hazard assessments and your ability to evaluate contractors and their competency. Are you actually looking for their detailed health and safety management system before you give them a project? Are you paying attention to their hazard assessments? Are you collecting these data and somehow storing those data for the projects that subcontractors are working? So these are some of the details that we will be looking at when we are focusing on element number 4. Continuing on with contractor management, communication is another crucial piece. How do you communicate your health and safety changes or requirements to your subcontractors? So if you have subcontractors, how the communication to subcontractor is another crucial piece that we will be actually focusing in on to see how you are conveying the OHS changes or requirements for certain projects. Coordinating the site-specific requirements, especially when you have multiple employers working on the site, where you are overseeing multiple different subcontractors. And again, we will be looking at certain forms and evaluate the subcontractors' forms as well. Moving on to element 7, which is preventive maintenance. Not many changes in this particular element. One change that you really do need to understand and pay attention, which affects all the maintenance program. In the past, we only used to pay a lot more detail into owned equipment. Now we have included leased and rented equipment. So any leased and rented equipment, we do need to see that in your matrix. We do need to see some sort of a documentation. In most cases, leased or rented equipment will have their own service package, but you just need to show that that's been identified and it's been followed through and carried out based on the program that's identified. So these are some of the major changes for element number 7. Training and communication. There are subtle, very important changes that you do need to pay attention to. How do you evaluate your training? evaluation of learning. So if somebody goes and takes working at heights, the easiest thing is you took working at heights from a third-party provider, and the provider actually have identified their learning outcomes, and there's a test, and you could pretty much validate that. Same thing goes on for equipment-specific training. If you are conducting any particular training to your employees, you do need to kind of identify evaluation of learning. So there should be some form of a test, some form of a competency assessment that you need to do. The other major thing is all tasks and roles need to have certain competencies identified. For example, as an electrician, most of you will be exposed to, your staff will be exposed to using any kind of a power elevated platforms, genie booms to perform their tasks. Identify that and show that training records for each and every one of those. Again, taking into consideration the different levels of responsibilities, abilities, language skills, and literacy. So when you are offering training, do assess the different levels of responsibilities. One example is if you have, for your supervisors, have you given any kind of supervisory training, due diligence training? Do they at least understand their basic duties, responsibilities for managing their workplace, work parties, identifying hazards? So these are some of the examples I would like to give so that you could start paying attention to it. Language is another area that sometimes do get ignored. If you have a large population of employees who speak one kind of language and there are language difficulties, then you do need to consider translating some of your policies, procedures, training in that language that represents the workplace. So do pay attention to some of those. Again, how are you going to administer and manage the training? So having some sort of a LMS, learning management system, would ease the process of managing and administering the training and maintaining the training records and following up on the refresher training. So these are some key points to remember. Focusing on the next major element, which is management of change. So management and change replaced senior management's responsibility, element 19. You do need to have a written procedure identifying management of change, which includes defining their duties and responsibilities, identify how we are going to implement changes. Changes from legal requirement, changes in process, changes in controls, changes in equipment, changes in work sites, locations, introduction of new products, new processes, new services. All these goes under management of change. How are you going to communicate and inform your team and make sure all your policies and procedures reflect the necessary changes? So you do need to make sure that new development of knowledge have to be identified. And, if you have new technology there to do certain type of tasks, you do need to go back and look at all your hazard assessment, align all your policies and procedures to reflect that and make sure your workplace understands and the communication is done, and you can validate that through some sort of a paper trail to show how you are managing the change. So actually element 2 and 3, hazard assessment and controls of hazards, needs to be identified in the change management process. Training is another crucial piece that you should pay attention to, because some of these changes would require additional training or additional knowledge being given to people. So be aware of this, because it is a huge change, and that reflects throughout the program in the way how we are going to be managing your health and safety management system. General challenges, legislative requirement is not prescribed anymore. For example, element number 16, which is health and safety reps, joint health and safety committee, which used to be a very prescriptive element. Now gets kind of embedded into element number 13. So that's why I told you, do not remove these documents, because you would actually still continue to maintain these documents. Number 13. So is workplace violence and harassment. Workplace violence and harassment, doing the risk assessment, managing the program, providing the training, bringing on the awareness, investigating the incidents, all that falls under legislative requirement. So there's no changes to that level of detail that you need to maintain, but it just gets merged into it. When we talk about COR and ISO, I always tell all my clients and all the seminars I do, for construction, I would highly, highly recommend all employers to consider starting with COR before you jump into ISO, because ISO is not as prescribed. The prescribed nature helps you actually zero into what you need to implement and how you need to maintain stuff. It is a great starting point so that you can actually define and implement a program. With ISO, if you have a workplace that is well defined with processes, you may have already implemented 9001, then it may be easier for you to get started with 45001 and seek for 45001. If you don't have that, then COR is definitely a starting point for you. So because of the prescriptive nature, and they have watered down some of the prescriptive nature of it, but it's still pretty good. Employers need to make sure you need to have the full compliance. So even though the elements have been compressed into 14 elements from 19 elements, things haven't really been taken away. So it's just embedded within the various different elements. And maintain records and documents is going to be one of your major challenges, and maintaining the revision controls. So those are some of the things you do need to really factor in when you are planning for your transition. Other general transition challenges, as I mentioned, I think I kind of said this too many times, document control management across all the elements, knowing when to do the transition, plan it well. If you have time, take the time. If you don't have time, you better get started soon. So October 1st is kind of like the rule of thumb I would use as a goalpost for you to decide if you are getting into cycle 4. Before October 1st, you do need to start working on transition. So any cycle 4 audits that happens after October 1st, 2022, have to be in COR 2020, and you do need resources to support you. Senior management's involvement is crucial, so is middle management's engagement. So I would highly recommend you giving more and more training to middle management on a yearly basis. Do not just hide behind, giving basics of supervision, which you gave 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Continue to give some training, and my recommendation is always go for private training where you bring the team together and you actually bring a team and deliver the training with your program, specific to your program. You will get a lot more out of that. COR 2020 alignment with WSIB and MLTSD SOCI program. I know ECAO is one of the approved providers for safety excellence, so is Forest Consulting Services. There is, I believe, about 22 approved providers who WSIB has approved as providers who can offer and support clients with the excellence journey. If you do have subcontractors who haven't thought about COR or ISO, encourage them to get started with safety excellence. I know at Forest, we have kind of carved out a SME program supporting small to medium-sized organization, helping them get excellence rebate, at the same time, helping them build a safety management system in small bite-sized pieces over the course of 3 to 4 years, so that they will have a full safety management system by the end of 3 to 4 years, depending on how many topics that they are choosing. And we do have a process in terms of, starting from the foundational topics, moving to intermediate, advanced, and supporting them while they are actually getting some sort of a rebate. The minimum rebate most of the organization walks away with is about $5,000. On your WSIB premiums, if you pay higher premiums, the rebate is a little bit higher than that. The ballpark figures is about 10% rebates, and this is all based on successful completion of the topics that you choose. Maximum 5 topics per year. I know one of the things that FORES is being really spearheading and working with WSIB is for our 100+ clients who are going through the COR journey with us. We are working with WSIB to accept their internal and external audit for the COR 2020 transition and give them the validation. So we will support them with the validation process so that they could get their rebate without having to do too many extra work. So those are some, stay tuned for those updates. I know it is coming. It's going to make a lot of people's life a lot more easier in submitting documents for validation. Definitely, once you become COR 2020 certified, apply for the SOCI program. Everyone must seek to become the safest employer in Ontario. It is a recognition. It is a pride. I would highly, highly encourage each and every one of you to seek towards that. The only organizations who do not qualify for becoming a safest employer is if you had fatalities in the past. If you had fatalities in the past, you will not qualify for the SOCI program, but everybody else should either have COR 2020 or ISO in order for you to become part of the SOCI program. If not, start the journey with WSIB Excellence, complete all the major topics, and what you do, if you choose to go through the Excellence process, you can implement all the safety management system. At least for 3 to 4 years, you have to be part of the journey. Then you could actually call in an external auditor and audit your program. Those reports can be submitted and validated for the SOCI application. So these are some of the important information and clarity I would like to share with everyone. Sustainable way for transition into COR 2020. Manage your transition roadmap. Start with an ambitious date that you want to achieve and then work backwards. Focus on your document and record control, and definitely training and management is going to be another crucial piece that you do need to factor in, because there's quite a bit of communication that you do need to do to your internal team. So those are some of the major points I want to cover in this morning's seminar. Hope that was useful for you, and thank you for attending the seminar this morning.
Thank you very much, Subi, for all your insights and the deep dive into the challenges. And this is a time for, I do see about 3 or 4 members registered here to ask any questions if you have any. We are here for a few minutes if you have any questions. If not, John, I'd like to actually call you into the conversation and ask you, because from my experience, I've seen that you have been connecting with a lot of these electrical contractors of late, and especially in the last 2 or 3 years, and hearing their pinch points, challenges. Is there something that you feel could be key takeaways for the listeners of this webinar?
Sure. For the companies that are, first of all, the ones that are considering COR or have procrastinating the journey of COR due to various reasons, COVID has been, challenging in certain parts. And don't get me wrong, a lot of companies are thriving through the COVID area. But my opinion, I view COR, this is for the owners and the presidents and leadership team. I view COR as a business strategy. I truly do. Because when you look at the accreditation process, once you achieve your accreditation, what's going to happen is going to enable you to have more opportunities for bidding, more options, hence more profitability. So you can be choiceful of how you want to bid and what type of jobs you want. that's aligned with your expertise in business. And it's a really good feeling when you're able to do that. The other thing that I like to mention is mitigating risk, because as an owner or leader, your job is to mitigate risk. And great thing about COR is once you're COR accredited, you already have some great sustainable processes in place. And the great thing is, and the reason why COR and IHSA has the internal audit submission every year is because they want to make sure once you get accreditation, you're maintaining it. And so as you maintain it, you're going to mitigate your risk, because the idea is if you're doing what you're supposed to be doing, chances are you're going to avoid some incidents and accidents and all these different other areas of concern. So that's a great thing. And so therefore, you can prove due diligence, because we all know whoever's on this call knows that you can't control everybody's incidents and making silly mistakes. But what you can control as an owner, leader, operation is proving due diligence. The other one where I like is a competitive advantage. So everybody has competition, electrical contractors everywhere, some great companies, some ones are trying to get that level, but it's going to give you a competitive edge. So once you get your COR accreditation, you can actually put that on your website, put that on your vehicles, put it in front of a sign on your front of your building, because that's going to give you that competitive edge and a great talking point for other opportunities for your business development, estimating, and networking. And it's such a great, proud moment. Leading to the next one is brand recognition. So we're always looking to build our brand, our personal brand, our company brand, and the COR accreditation will allow you to build that brand and create that safety culture. Hence the next one, enhance your safety culture, because you may have a 5 out of 10 safety culture now. If you are accredited, you may get to an 8, and that sustainability and the continuous improvements will get that to a 9. It's very hard to be a 10 out of a 10 in safety culture, in my opinion. However, you can always look for opportunities for improvement, behavior changes, and it takes time. Management and employee engagement. We're always looking for ways to engage our employees in management. What COR is really good at is because it's so prescriptive, comprehensive, but once it's followed and you're being consistent with your supervisors doing certain activities that are consistent, if it's daily, weekly, monthly, what you're doing is showing them, believe it or not, the possibilities that could be done if you're consistent. So once you get accreditation through health and safety, you're actually figuring out some opportunities to fill in some operational gaps that you may have in your business. If we create a structured plan and assign roles and responsibilities for this important operation task, and then follow up and measure, you're going to thrive through that process. And COR gives you that experience to be able to do that. Lastly, the WSIB rebates for companies. So we did mention about WSIB Excellence Program. Yes, take advantage of that. While you're getting your COR accreditation, or if you're already COR accredited, the Excellence Program enables you, again, another brand recognition and a way to get some rebates back. The SOCI program is amazing once you are accredited, because that is a bragging right. Talk about the biggest award you can think of in Ontario, and also more double dipping into rebates. And that's another discussion. So I really, really want to talk about the business strategy around it. And that to me is a win-win for the employees, for the owners, and everybody else. So Addie, that's all I want to share. And the last thing I do want to mention, that if you are on this and you're listening and you are struggling and you're thinking about having some resource help, and we have so many different programs and different ways of helping our clients and potentially helping you, I'd be more than happy, no charge, complimentary, virtual or in-person meeting to show you how we support our clients to get accreditation. And we have a lot of clients that are already COR, but are struggling to maintain it. And because you might be a person that's wearing multiple hats, and you would really be able to have a support resource. And also, if you're manual processes and you want it having an online management system, there's so many areas that we could potentially help and give you some options to consider. And I'd be more than happy, not like pressure of any kind, just to provide you some insight, some value, and show you what we do to make you kind of realize, you know what, it's really cool that there's help out there and assistance, and it's not overly expensive, really, truly, and it's 100% justified. So that's all I wanted to leave, Addy. And if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer any.
Thank you so much, John. And before we end the session, since we have Sobi here, Sobi, you're an external core auditor. One question I have for you, and it could be pertinent actually to the audience that is here, is the element 4, which you know is a brand new element in the COR 2020, the contractor and procurement. And mostly electrical contractors do work as trades for GCs, right? So is it that they'll have to provide their own program? They have to have some kind of a full-fledged program and documentation to provide to their GCs, or can they use the GC's program and shadow it? Or could you throw some light on that? Because there could be a little bit of confusion on that ground.
Thanks, Eddie. Yeah, it's a good question. I'm assuming those of you who are in this seminar have some level of safety management system in place. So you would be actually giving copies of your program. You would give copies of your hazard assessment that you do at the sites working on GC's projects. So you don't need to adapt many different things unless the GC specifically asks you to follow their program. You can continue to use your program. That's why I would encourage each and every one of the subcontractors that you may work with who may not have a program. Encourage them to implement their own program. It's from a liability standpoint, it's much less onerous on you, and it also ensures that you have subcontractors who are working on your site well trained and informed of hazards, how to safely work, so that from a due diligence perspective, you have employers who are there supporting you as subcontractors are safety conscious people, and they have a safety management system in place. So I hope I answered both parts of the question. One is working with GCs, and the others is you having your own subcontractors.
Thank you so much for actually WSIB Excellence, like you rightly said, could be one way. Like John said, COR could be the other way. It's a combination of many things. Thank you very much, everyone. And so it's time to end the session. But before that, one last thing, if you have any questions, please do share it with us by email. Our marketing team will be connecting with you through a feedback email. Do get back to us and we'll take it offline and try our best to get back to you with the responses. So until we meet in the next webinar, thank you very much for making it. Once again, a big thank you to ECAO, Kathy. You're a superstar as always, Kamakshi. Thank you very much for your social media support. That's it from Forest Consulting Services. Have a great day. Stay safe. Even though it's attractive out there, don't get too much into the snow.
Thank you, and have a safe and awesome day. Bye for now.
Bye-bye.